Good day to my colleagues, to the people of the territory, to the testifiers. This is a very interesting day as we have two sets of testifiers before us to deal with two critical issues here in the territory. As it relates to my first set of questions, I'm going to separate them. I'm going to deal with Human Services first and then deal with WAPA. As it relates to Human Services and this Medicaid, in your testimony, you stated that there is over 1,000 individuals that are off island that are receiving these services. And my question is, have you guys done any kind of research or looking into these individuals to see if everyone is still domiciled here in the territory to verify that the funding or assistance is going in the right direction? Morning.
Danielle Baptiste, Assistant Commissioner. The 1,000 plus individuals that were mentioned were actually providers that are off island.
Oh, those are the providers off
Correct.
island. Okay, I wanted to make sure. The other question I wanted to ask had to do with you had a issue when it came to individuals getting services, and what I was concerned about is if we don't provide this money, what kind of major impact do you see would happen in this territory?
The money that is being requested will allow us to continue to pay our outstanding vendors that we owe, as well as a portion will be allow us to continue having providers provide services to the community. If we don't get this $3 million, we're already in the hole. So if we don't get this $3 million, we'll have to say that our entire Medicaid services are compromised.
Oh my. When you spoke a little bit about temporary, some situations are temporary. Have you assessed to see how long temporarily they will be offline, etc.?
Yes, we did.
Could you share with us?
So for the time being, given where we are currently, Danielle Baptiste, Assistant Commissioner, we have about 1 quarter left in the fiscal year.
About 1 quarter?
Yeah, so pretty much until the end of the fiscal year, we anticipate seeing this pause or limitations in services.
Well, Human Services is a very critical agency to this territory. I am going to be supporting to give them money, but I also see this as just a quick fix right now. And this is going to be something that has to be addressed long term so we could get over not only just this hump, but to make sure these critical services are available to the residents on a continuous basis. So that's all I needed to hear from you guys. And I will
Commissioner Avril George, we are looking as a department and ways that we can improve our processes, as well as ways that we can cut back on certain items.
Well, since you brought that up, I had another question here. You talked about fraud, waste, and abuse. How do you guys tackle that and identify what type of funding falls under that category to see if that could also assist, that monies are available for individuals that are not doing things like this?
Gary Smith, Medicaid Director. So we onboarded a Program Integrity Director last August of 2023, working to staff that unit up with Medicaid quality control reviewers who will be responsible for reviewing member applications for their quality, but then also, verifying information that's submitted. And then secondly, fraud investigators who will focus more on provider visits, provider services, and the unit also works in conjunction with the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit at the Department of Justice.
And that's how you'll be able to assist with catching.
1 minute.
Thank you so much. I have to move on to WAPA. For me, WAPA has been in a state of emergency. This is just a misnomer for me at this point. I think the pushback the public saw from the legislature, we didn't really like the reason that was put out to the public as to why it was done initially, basically to circumvent our authority as it relates to the purse strings. We didn't like that message. But for me, being in a state of emergency, I think we should have been there a long time ago. Couple of things I wanted to ask quickly. What is the plan? Has this incident force as well as the board, do you guys have any plans? Could I just ask at least this one question? Do you guys have any plans to do any assessments with the community? Because it seems your focus is about paying the vendors, but during this state of emergency, a lot of people were hurt and damaged with equipment, appliances, etc. Are you guys looking at that aspect of it to see what can be done? Are you looking state of emergency on a national level to see if we could get financial assistance to the people of the territory? Because this is not something that was limited. I could use myself for example, like this week I paid out $10,000 because of WAPA constantly hitting my business that I have to now fly in a technician to fix my transmitter. So I'm just using me one person. What are you guys planning on doing from that aspect when it comes to the community that is seriously damaged financially during a state of emergency?
Well, good morning, Senator. Thank you for the question. I'll sort of defer that other aspect of it to WAPA on the board. Yes, the incident command directly are trying to figure out how to pay the next bill. And I just want to really share with the public and yourself, the reason for that is every bill impacts something else. So a good example is if we don't pay fuel, it interrupts this whole VTOL transaction because, of course, VTOL. So while it looks like, what's the big deal with paying fuel, we got to make sure that if we don't pay that, we don't get to close the VTOL deal. So I just wanted to ask, like, yes, the incident command is driving forward on some of these bills because
I don't have a problem with you paying the bills. I'm asking about the other side of it.
I mean, I'll defer to Chairman Fleming in terms of WAPA's policies.
Yeah, Kyle Fleming, Chairman, Governing Board. I think you actually touched on a key highlight for the value of incident command to the authority in terms of creating bandwidth. Being able to have support incident command works very clearly on making sure the critical vendors and our support on the operational side is that bandwidth is growing, which also frees up bandwidth for the rest of the team relative to being able to address other issues as well. So I think it's both direct and indirect support by allowing for bandwidth to be enabled, which allows for key areas such as you mentioned to be addressed as well.
Okay, what are your plans to actually do it? I heard what you said, but you didn't really answer what I asked.
Yeah, I mean, the authority, I mean, we've had, if you think back to, for example, like the water crisis last year, where we had a very, very extreme community engagement, which we had to do as a result of, being able to put some of the concerns at rest. We already have a foundation of that. I would say we are certainly, as we're kind of still, the dust is clearing on some of the recent rotations. Now we can start going through really the assessments to be able to devise that plan specifically. But again, having the bandwidth to do that is critical, and that's where the collaboration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be sending y'all my bill. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Point of inquiry to the chair to legal. Inquiry to the chair to legal counsel. As it relates to Bill 350292, how this bill is drafted at the request of the governor, I'm concerned at the drafting of it and I need some legal advice. Our current law says that state of emergencies cannot, after the initial 60 days, has to roll over in 30-day intervals. With us drafting it this way and now changing it to 90 days, are we now going to be in conflict with the current law? And it also says that it will be enforced until September 19, 2024, unless earlier lifted or extended by order of the governor. That would mean that the governor could continuously just create executive orders to continue it. And I don't want to be in a situation where we might inadvertently now be giving this governor total control over WAPA at an extended period without, this is what this basically says from my perspective, and the law says it has to be done in 30-day intervals. So could you please tell me from what the code says and what the governor sent down here to us, what is the difference between the two? Thank you very
You may
much.
respond on legal counsel through the chair. Please recognize the legal counsel's mic.
No. The green light is on. Through the chair to Senator Heilig, I have to read the law, I have to read the bill. Another senator approached me with it already, and I cannot just give you off-the-cuff answer without looking at what the bill proposes, what the law has, and how you can amend it.
To Mr. President, when I asked the question, I actually anticipated him to do that. So if we have to give him time to read and respond to us, I will happily wait for the response.
No
Thank you.
problems. Legal counsel, you can take the.
To Senator Heiliger, as the law stands right now, the governor would have been required to submit a request for an extension of the state of emergency, which he did, timely. The bill now that's before you seeks to extend the time that he has requested for a state of emergency to 90 days. The bill as written would allow the governor to lift the time, for example, he grants you 90 days, he can lift that at any time before the expiration of time, or under the bill, he can extend it just outright. You will be giving him that authority. You can amend. This question was posed earlier by Senator Gittens. I was in the process of looking at the research to give him an answer. So really, as Senator Gittens, you request, again, if you decide to submit an amendment, you prevail over everybody else.
Thank you. Thank you, legal counsel. There's a follow-up to the question that she posed. You recognize.
I'm not understanding what he's saying about prevailing.
Please recognize the mic of.
Okay, thank you. I just want to understand what he's saying about Senator Gittens and prevailing. If you have a personal conversation out in the hall versus a senator asking for a request on the Senate floor, I am trying to understand what all the extra conversation was about, because we're just trying to make sure we get the pertinent information. Thank you.
I think the legal counsel responded to your request.
Once again, to my colleagues, to the people of the territory, to the testifiers. Again, I do not have an issue with what we're attempting to do to assist human services with making sure the people of our territory get the services they need. My biggest issue is still with this WAPA state of emergency piece of legislation. I am not co-signing on it. There's a reason why the entire section of this code is riddled with 30-day intervals. Because I don't want us to go back to the reason why this law was even created in the first place. It was created to have 30-day intervals to force the executive branch to share information with the legislature. Now, one of the things that this law says, no state of the emergency may continue longer than 30 days unless renewed by the governor. It speaks to what has to be included if he's going to submit for renewal. It specifically says to request must include specific reasons for the extension, the time period for the extension, and the plan of action to address the conditions that necessitate the extension. If we attempt to change and go contrary to what the law already says, we're going to be blocking out 90 days where the executive branch don't have to tell us nothing. They don't have to share us any information with us if they don't feel like it. And I am to the point where I would rather it continue in 30-day intervals for us to get the necessary information, because that is why the law was created in the first place. You know, I listened to a lot of what was shared today. I do believe WAPA is in a state of an emergency. I'm going to repeat that. But some of the things that we are cheerleading, if it was not for bad management, if it was not for lopsided deals, we would not have been in this situation in the first place, that we even have to be here cleaning it up. So say one, say two for me. But at the end of the day, it is important that we try to change the entire structure of WAPA, the mechanism of how we do things, pay our vendors in a timely manner. And it is my hope that at some point my colleagues will support my piece of legislation I'm attempting to special order for us to put 2 ex-official members on the board of WAPA, so that we will not be consistently blindsided every time situations happen here in the territory when it comes to this utility. Thank you very much. Override Bill number 35-0268, an act amending Title 23, Virgin Islands Code, Chapter 10, Subchapter 1, relating to the declaration of a state of emergency by the governor and the matters related thereto, to be placed on the agenda, the item before the last item in the third block. I so move.
Senator, you have to restate that. I think you're asking.
Motion, I move to override Bill number 35-0268, an act amending Title 23, Virgin Islands Code, Chapter 10, Subchapter 1, relating to the declaration of a state of emergency by the governor and matters related thereto. I so move.
Motion properly made by, for override by Senator Francis Heiliger, seconded by Senator DeGraff. Roll call on the measure. You need 8 in order to move this on to the next round.
I move pursuant to Rule 509B of the Rules of the 35th Legislature to special order Bill number 35-0248, a resolution petitioning the United States.
1 second, Senator. We do have another override. Let's go to the other override.
I will withdraw my motion at the moment.
Thank you. Again, we just.
Record that in this piece of legislation I attempted to override, we did define what a man-made catastrophe was. And all of this information was suggested to us by legal counsel, because at the end of the day, we as a body requested from legal counsel to give us avenues of how to protect this institution in the future. So when we defined what a man-made catastrophe was, it was a man-made catastrophe means a disaster created or caused by deliberate or neglect by human beings. So we were not in a situation where if somebody deliberately did something, or if somebody neglected to do something. That is the definition that we came up with, that was recommended to this body to make sure we covered ourselves. So that is why some of us went ahead and voted in the affirmative. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much,
motion.
Senator Francis Heidegger. You recognize your motion at this time.
Thank you. I move pursuant to Rule 509B, the rules of the 35th Legislature, to special order Bill number 35-0248, a resolution petitioning the United States Congress to amend the Revised Organic Act of the Virgin Islands to authorize the people of the Virgin Islands to elect an Attorney General of the Virgin Islands, and to ask that Bill number 35-0248 be placed as the item before the last item in the third block and be placed on the agenda. I so moved.
Motion properly made by Senator Francis Heidegger, second.
To do a point of inquiry to the president. This revote, if a vote is already casted and we were getting a call from a numerical call from the clerk, would we as a body have to decide if we're going to revote, or you just have the authority to say we're going to revote again? That's all I need to make sure for clarity and also for the public to understand.
Absolutely, Senator. I do have the authority to call for a revote and to make sure that there's clarity in the voting process for both you, my colleagues, and the public.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening to my colleagues. Good evening to the people of the territory. Good evening to everyone. I know we have this is interesting because this is the first time session has really kicked in this late, but this is part of our jobs and we're here for the long haul. But as it relates to block number 1, Lindell Williams as a member of the Waste Management Authority Board, as well as Nell Davis II as a member of the Waste Management Authority Board. I did have opportunity to really listen to these, and I don't have a problem with these individuals. I think when it comes to these particular positions, it is important that we make a serious attempt to improve and revamp the Waste Management Authority. And I did enjoy listening to these two individuals while they shared their vision as to what direction the Waste Management Authority should go in. So I fully support these two nominees. As it relates to the zoning, I really did not have any major issues as I had an opportunity to listen to quite a bit of these, even in regards to some of the zonings for St. John, as well as those in the St. Croix district. I am in support for any particular project that potentially could help spur our economic growth. Some of these projects had to do with dealing with providing specific type of housing and any type of programs that I believe that we need as a community to continue to build ourselves. So as it relates to this particular block, I am in full support of this. So I will vote in the affirmative at the appropriate time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Alma Francis.
I rise in support of all the leases in this block. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Evening, once again, I rise in support of most, if not all, of the pieces in this block as it relates to Bill 350030. You know, sometimes we have to take the time out to make sure that we support Virgin Islanders that have played a role in making us who we are and really marking us to the outside. To Mr. Von Benjamin and his music, his participation as it relates to spreading the beautiful music of reggae, whether he was in bands or educating. I think it is definitely a great opportunity for this legislature to really take the time out to honor him. As it relates to 350215, changing basically the time frame you could renew your license for a firearm. I have learned over the years that, you know, sometimes things need to be amended as we go along, and that's one of the things being members of this institution we can do. So as opposed to it being set in stone, we extended it so that people don't have to keep coming every 5 seconds as it relates to dealing with firearms renewals. As it relates to 350230, this piece of legislation speaks to the inspection of license for automobiles. I know that we had a very intensive conversation in the specific committee, and at the appropriate time, I am sure we will vote on this measure as it relates to, this one had to do with the safaris, if I recall correctly. 350291, I definitely support this piece of legislation. We have quite a bit of people that fall under human services, that get services that is vital to their survival in this territory. Unfortunately, we're having some sort of issue with Medicaid, as has been shared by human services. And if we could assist them in making sure that the critical services are continued under their particular branch of government by giving them some funding, I am fully in support of that. At the end of the day, as elected officials, it is our job to specifically work on legislation that benefit the masses. And I think the majority of the pieces of legislation here this evening definitely benefit the people of this territory. And to save some time, I will return the balance of my time.
Thank you very much.
With this piece of legislation, the amendment, I am fully in support of us giving $3 million to Human Services, but the amendment that was shown to me by Mr. Fonseca, which we have waived the rules in reading so the public could understand, my concern was the additional $1 million did not specifically identify where those funds would be going. And my concern is if we were going to add an additional $1 million just to send it to Human Services for them to now decide how those monies are going to be disseminated, but you verbally said to me you want them to go to the clinics, I am concerned that it might not make it there unless it's specifically written out into the amendment. I hold the balance of my time.
You reserve the balance of your time. How much time remains for Senator Francis Heidegger?
1 minute, 12 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the Medicaid program at this time owes millions of dollars. In addition, we are talking about funds that are owed to East End that is about to lay off employees, and they've gotten a note effective June 16th. The Wang Louis Hospital has met with the committee, and they also are dependent on Medicaid fundings. This amendment requires the Human Services Committee to submit a detailed report every month to the Committee on Health, Hospitals, and Human Services of their expenditure. I reserve the balance of my time.
And what time remains for Senator?
And while I support giving the additional $1 million, giving a report after the fact basically means nothing to me. At the end of the day, if we're going to amend this, we need to specifically state where the monies are going to go. Because if we turn it over to Human Services, there is no guarantee that these monies will go where they need to go. And we decided we were supporting you getting the additional $1 million, but I think the document needs to express how we're going to spend these additional $1 million. I reserve the balance of my time.
And what time remains for Senator Francis Heidegger? And 11 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. This legislation, this amendment is very specific. These will be Medicaid expenditures. We are simply adding $1 million to the $3 million recommended by the governor. I reserve the balance of my time.
And what time remains for Senator Fonseca?
50.
Medicaid expenditures were more than $3 million. So by adding on this $1 million, there's no guarantee
30 seconds.
that it's going to go to the clinics to even save these jobs. It must be recorded so we could specify where those funds are going. I reserve the balance of my time.
What time remains for Senator?
Thank you so kindly, Mr. President. We received testimony today, Mr. President, from the Director of the Medicaid Service informing the 35th Legislature that he in fact needs $6.5 million to make his medical expenditures. I reserve the balance of my time.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Fonseca proved my point. They need $6 million, and until you verify how we're spending this additional $1 million, they could spread it across and spend it in any direction.
Time.
When our intent was to give it to the clinics. It needs to be identified. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Francis Heidegger.
Mr. Chair, the amendment is real clear. The Medicaid program expends over $139.4 million. They would be required to submit a report on the first day of each month, effective August 1st, 24, to the Committee on Health, Hospitals, and Human Services, detailing the expenditures of this sum appropriated.
Time.
Thank you, Mr. President.